witchy weirdos. Welcome back to Lore Play. I'm Dana Pereira, fellow witchy weirdo and fucking proud of it. I actually kind of feel like as I get older, I want to lean in to full witch mode. I have this unsatiated desire to slow the fuck down. I want to put my hands in dirt and grow things, and I want to lay in the rain, and I want to grow out my gray hair and embrace my wrinkles and marvel at nature and just evolve into a full ass witch. All the witches on social media make it look like so much fun. And listen, I know that what I just said is the stereotype of a witch and does not necessarily shine light on actual witches, but it's all I have to go off of right now. Today's story is all about a stereotypical witch. And I want to make that clear because it comes from the perspective of not her, so that probably tells you everything you need to know. But the legend is fucking extraordinary. And being that it's Women's History Month, I thought we could all use a little reminder of the power of a woman. Especially a woman that everybody feared. So I need you to picture something for me. Imagine that you are a town, a small town, a hot Mississippi in August swamp-ass town. I'm talking Mississippi Delta, whose name literally means, depending on who you ask, River of Death. Which, honestly, the foreshadowing. Chef's kiss. Incredible. Today's episode is about the Witch of Yazoo. And trust me, she's giving icon. She serves up a body count, death by quicksand, a very dramatic final speech, a town fire, broken chains, and a grave that to this day the city of Yazoo has someone specifically employed to keep in chains. Because if those chains break, according to local legend, she comes back. Yazoo City sits about 40 miles northwest of Jackson, Mississippi, tucked right up against the edge of the Mississippi Delta. And the Delta is flat, disturbingly flat. The kind of flat where you could stand on your front porch and watch your dog run away for 3 days. The air sits on you in summer like a wet wool blanket that somebody microwaved. Spanish moss, cypress trees, and I say all of this with love. The Delta is beautiful and eerie and uniquely, achingly American. And Yazoo City is right there on the edge of it. The town itself grew into a cotton economy town, then got hit hard in the Civil War, got rebuilt, and then got hit hard with yellow fever, got rebuilt again, and then, in the 1880s, a woman moved to the banks of the Yazoo River. And that's where our story really starts. Here's the thing about the Witch of Yazoo that I find genuinely fascinating. Nobody knows her actual name. It's not like, oh yeah, that was Gretchen Johnson, she's a witch. The townspeople literally disliked her so much that they never asked. Sources described her simply as the old woman, which is wild to me. Hated so much that nobody knew her name, and then she becomes the most famous figure in the town's entire history? God, that feels like the best kind of revenge. I actually kind of love that for her. So, what do we know about her? Well, we know she lived alone in a shack on the banks of the Yazoo River. She apparently had a lot of cats. A lot. No judgment here. I'm not going to be the one throwing stones at a woman who had too many cats. She was low-key living my dream. Just, throw a few dogs in there. She was described as half ghost, half scarecrow, and all witch. Now, obviously, with a baddie like that, rumors are gonna follow. And there were rumors. Rumors said that on stormy nights, she would lure fishermen into her home, and then she would poison them with arsenic and bury their bodies on a densely wooded hill nearby. This was, allegedly, her hobby. Like, fuck knitting hats or baking cookies, she chose violence. Now, a couple thoughts on that. Burying bodies on a wooded hill is a very specific disposal method. She's a single woman. She's gonna drag men's bodies, dig graves, and then bury said bodies all by herself. And I'm not saying that she couldn't do it. I mean, I think women can do anything. But I'm willing to bet that as a woman, she probably could have come up with a much more clever way of disposing of the bodies. And apparently, she was doing this so much that it became a local rumor. But nobody did anything about it. I mean, I guess that's on brand. But look, I want to be a little careful here too, because this is a legend. It was written down primarily in 1971 by a man named Willie Morris, who grew up in Yazoo City and was writing a semi-autobiographical novel about his childhood. The story, as we have it, is filtered through memory, folklore, and the very particular lens of a small southern town, where an old woman living alone by a river would absolutely have been considered suspicious and threatening, probably for no good reason at all. Or, I don't know, maybe for a very good reason. Who knows? Was she actually murdering fishermen? I don't know. Were fishermen actually disappearing? Maybe. I don't know. Was she a woman living unconventionally in a swamp outside of a bored town that gave her a whole ass murder hobby? I mean, it's what it sounds like. It's the afternoon of May 25th, 1884. Joe Bob Duggett is on his raft, minding his business on the Yazoo River, probably thinking about whatever a young man in 1884 Mississippi thinks about. What's that, like catfish maybe? Or boobs probably? He floats past the old woman's house and he hears a moan. A terrible, ungodly moan from inside the house. Now, I want you to imagine being Joe Bob Duggett. You hear a terrible, ungodly moan coming from the house of the woman literally everyone in town says is a witch who murders fishermen. And your options are, A, keep floating. I mean, you're literally on a raft on the river. Or B, tie up your raft to a cypress branch, walk up to the house, and peer through the window. Obviously, Joe Bob chooses B because Joe Bob always chooses B. And what did Joe Bob see when he looked through that window? 2 dead men on the floor. And standing over them, the old woman, just covered in cockleburrs and dirt, just absolutely filthy, waving her arms, reciting some kind of incantation or spell, just going absolutely off in whatever curse language you use when you're doing whatever she was doing. Joe Bob hauled himself back to town as fast as he could and went directly to the sheriff, which, finally, sounds like a solid decision. The sheriff assembled his men and they went back to the old woman's house. But by the time they got there, the 2 dead men were gone. The old woman was gone. And what they found instead were dozens of half-starved cats, a pile of fish bones, and 2 skeletons hanging from the ceiling. 2 skeletons hanging from the ceiling. I mean, sounds like those guys were there a lot longer than the other 2 guys. The shock of that alone must have stopped them in their tracks, but they didn't even have time to process that. Because in the distance, outside of a window, they see the witch escaping into the swamp. The sheriff, bless his heart, shouted the most movie sheriffy thing he could shout. "Stop! In the name of the law!" And shockingly, she did not stop in the name of the law. Instead, she took off in what was described as a maniacal gallop. And that's all I'm going to see when somebody says that they're running a 5K or a marathon, just maniacal galloping. Now, she's a woman described as half ghost, half scarecrow, and she is galloping maniacally into a swamp. They immediately forget about the skeletons and go chasing after her. And they do catch up with her. But not because of their superior law enforcement skills. They catch up with her because she had run directly into a patch of quicksand. Yeah, quicksand. And as she's going down, her pockmarked face strained toward the sky, she has just enough time before the quicksand takes her to turn to the people watching and shout, and I quote, "I will return. Everyone always hated me here, and I will break out of my grave and burn down the whole town on the morning of May 25th, 1904. And then, with what I imagine to be a very dry gurgle, she was gone. And what a revengeful genius. Her curse was so specific. She had to have left them all dreading that date for the full 20 years. A specific action, a specific date, a specific year? That is a lot of specifics to deliver while drowning in sand. But you know what they say. Women are excellent multitaskers. This woman was delivering a precise forecast of supernatural vengeance while suffocating. Like, truly, the dedication. They retrieved her body from the quicksand and buried her in the center of Glenwood Cemetery. And around her grave, they put the heaviest chain they could find. It's said that her original gravestone had the letters TW, although nobody knew her name, which leads people to speculate that could possibly stand for the witch. And that was it. The years went by, the long Mississippi seasons came and went. The town forgot about the old woman. And then, with a couple bats of the eyelids, it was May 25th, 1904. It's a Wednesday. A young woman named Miss Pauline Wise is preparing for her wedding. She goes into her parlor to show some visitors her wedding gifts, and she discovers a small blaze. Now, at this point, maybe it's an accident or a candle or a spark from the hearth. There are several competing theories about how the Yazoo City fire actually started. Some accounts say it was a young boy playing with matches. Some say an electrical fire. Some say it was the wedding preparations. The actual cause of the fire was never officially determined. But here's the thing that no mundane explanation can quite account for. The wind. Area weather reports from May 25th, 1904 make no mention of high winds in Yazoo City that day. And yet, witnesses described winds that were unusual, fierce, inexplicable for that time of year. Flames that jumped through the air, fire that leapt from building to building in ways that defied normal patterns, as if driven by something. The volunteer fire department responded, and they could not stop it. The fire burned through the business district. It burned through the residential streets. It burned and it burned and it burned. By the time it was over, the Yazoo City fire of 1904 had destroyed 124 businesses and over 200 homes. 324 buildings in total. The entire business district was gone. Half of the town effectively was ash. And here's the extraordinary thing. By some accounts, nobody died. Or almost nobody. Some reports mention one death from injuries when a building collapsed. But for a fire that destroyed 324 buildings in a town of 4,000 to 7,000 people, the survival rate was fucking bonkers. The town was devastated, but it was not annihilated. The morning after the fire, a group of citizens made their way to Glenwood Cemetery. And who knows why? Maybe someone remembered the curse, or maybe they just loved a good cemetery walk. I, personally, am a cemetery walk girly. And they found the chains broken. The heaviest chains the sheriff could find, 30 solid links that were laid on the grave in 1884, were broken and discovered the morning after the fire. Now, was this the result of 20 years of weather and corrosion making iron brittle? Possibly. Did vandals maybe break them? Sure. Were they broken before the fire and people just happened to notice after? Maybe. Are there completely rational explanations for this? Yeah, I guess, but that's boring as fuck, and we are not here to be boring Betsies. And also, it was the exact date that she said. And also, there were weird winds that nobody can explain. And also, the chains were motherfucking broken. So, what happened after the fire? A lot, actually. Yazoo City did what small towns have always done when catastrophe hits them. It rebuilt. Remarkably fast, actually. The witch's grave still sat in Glenwood Cemetery, now with its chains broken, and people just kind of, went back to forgetting about it. And that might have been the end of the story, honestly. A local legend, some broken chains, a fire that people maybe whispered about in connection with the old curse. Except in 1971, Willie Morris published that book. Now, Willie Morris was a Yazoo City native who had gone on to become, and this is legitimately impressive, the editor of Harper's Magazine in New York, one of the most prestigious literary magazines in the country, and the youngest person to ever hold that position. He came home to Mississippi and he wrote Good Old Boy, A Delta Boyhood, a semi-autobiographical novel about growing up in Yazoo City. And in that book, among the stories of his childhood, he included the story of the Witch of Yazoo. And that was it. That was the moment the legend escaped the town. Good Old Boy became a beloved Southern classic. It got made into a movie in 1988. Morris followed it up in 1989 with a sequel specifically about the witch. And suddenly, the Witch of Yazoo wasn't just a local ghost story. She was literature. She was part of the Southern Gothic canon. Willie Morris died in 1999, and he was buried in Glenwood Cemetery in Yazoo City, 13 paces due south of the witch's grave. He measured. He chose to be buried there. He walked the paces and said, "This is it. This is the spot I want to be buried when I die." 13 paces from the woman whose story he told. And I don't know what to do with that. It's like beautiful and weird and very personal. I mean, he measured out 13 paces. That is personal. He had big feelings over this to want to be buried pretty much with her. So here's where we are now. Glenwood Cemetery in Yazoo City, Mississippi, is a historic cemetery that has been receiving the Mississippi dead since the mid-1800s. It's beautiful, peaceful, the kind of quiet that old cemeteries have. And right in the middle of the historic section, there is a grave, surrounded by rusty chains. Or, at any given time, partially rusty chains, because according to local accounts, The chains keep getting broken. The cemetery maintains them. Someone, an actual person whose job this is responsible for keeping those chains in place. And they often find them broken again shortly after repair. The tombstone in the center of the chained plot has an inscription on it that literally tells its own story. There's even a street sign in the cemetery leading you to the witch's grave. Visitors come from all over to see it. The witch is officially a tourism asset. Children go rattle chains on dares. Adults go and stand at the grave at night and feel things they can't quite name. And the current local lore, the modern addendum to the legend, says this: when all of the chains are gone from her grave, the witch will return to exact her revenge on Yazoo City. Not if, when, because the chains keep breaking. Slowly, link by link, and the cemetery keeps fixing them. It's a race, almost. A slow, strange race between a town and the memory of a woman they never even named. Now, obviously, there are a bunch of variations and theories. And you know I love to dig into the theories. So here goes. Theory 1, she was real and she really cursed them. I mean, that's it. An old woman, possibly named Tandy Warren, remember the TW on the grave, possibly something else entirely, who knows, lived on the Yazoo River in the 1880s. She may have been a practicing herbalist, a folk healer, or someone with deep knowledge of plants and their properties, which in that era would have looked like witchcraft to the wrong people. She was chased into quicksand and died cursing the town. And 20 years later, on the exact date she specified, the town burned. The fire actually happened. That's not in dispute. 324 buildings really did burn on May 25th, 1904. The chains really were found broken the next day, and the weird winds really were described by witnesses. Is that a coincidence? Possibly. Is it a fulfilled curse? Possibly. It's kind of definitely giving fulfilled curse, in my opinion. Theory 2, she was just a misunderstood woman, and this is a classic witch panic. I mean, this is a theory that I keep coming back to. Throughout the 1800s, and indeed throughout much of history, older women who lived alone, who had knowledge of herbs and medicine, who kept to themselves, who didn't fit the social mold, these women got labeled. Witch, hag, evil old crone. The Witch of Yazoo fits this pattern almost too perfectly. She's old. She lives alone. She has cats. She lives apart from the community. She's described as ugly. And isn't it interesting how witch descriptions always include ugliness, as if wickedness has to be visible on the face? She has no name. She has no family. She has no defender. Were fishermen actually disappearing? Maybe. Fishing is dangerous. Men drowned. Men got lost. Men had accidents on rivers all the time. Did the town need someone to blame? Possibly. The fire is real. The curse is maybe a story the town told itself afterwards to make sense of a catastrophe, to give it meaning, to say this wasn't random. This wasn't just a fire that got out of control in a drought. This was something she did, because she's dead. So how is she going to dispute them? And the broken chains fit neatly into a story that was already being told, because people looked for evidence that would confirm what they already believed. Now, theory 3 is that Willie Morris made most of it up. Multiple sources acknowledge that the grave and some version of the legend existed before Morris was born. People in Yazoo City did tell stories about the witch. The fire was real, the chained grave was real, but the very specific version of the story we all know, Joe Bob Duggett, the two dead men on the floor, the maniacal gallop, the pock-marked face strained toward the sky, the very specific curse with the very specific date, that version comes primarily from Morris's 1971 book, which is a work of literary fiction drawing on real folklore and memory. So it's possible that Morris amplified, sharpened, dramatized, and in some places invented details that became, over time, treated as historical record. Because the story was so good. Does that make it less interesting? I don't think so. Folklore is always like this. It's always a collaboration between events and memory and imagination and whoever happened to write it down first. The Witch of Yazoo is real in the way all legends are real. She is true to something in the human experience, even if not every detail is literally true. Now we go to theory 4, which is less theory, more warning. She's coming back, and we should all be concerned about those chains. Which, I mean, it's also a valid theory. I'm not ruling it out, just in case she can travel past Yazoo City. Girl, please remember, I've had your back the whole time. The Witch of Yazoo is a story about a town's relationship with someone it refused to integrate. She didn't fit. She was odd and solitary and strange, and the town looked at her and went, not one of us. And the legend, whatever its basis in historical fact, captures something very real about what happens to the people a community decide to exclude. They become mythologized. They become monsters. And then, sometimes, the thing the community feared and rejected becomes the thing the community is most famous for, the thing that puts them on the map. Yazoo City is famous for the witch. The witch is the reason people have heard of Yazoo City. She gets costume storytellers and a grave with a sign and a whole tourism infrastructure. The woman they didn't even name is now the face of the entire town. There's something genuinely poetic about that. Almost like justice, in the way that folklore sometimes delivers justice. Slow, sideways, and with a little too much fire. And also, the chains keep breaking. I'm just saying. I'm just noting that the chains keep breaking. Now, here's a few rapid-fire additional details I couldn't fit organically into the story, but I absolutely cannot let you leave without knowing. 1. The town of Yazoo City was built on the site of a graveyard. There were 2 large Native American mounds, each 400 feet in diameter and over 50 feet high. They were leveled to build streets. When leveled, workers found bowls and weapons unlike any other known indigenous artifacts. I'm not saying that this is relevant to the curse. I'm just noting that the town was literally built on top of ancient graves and then also got cursed and also then burned down sequentially. So do with that what you will. 2, some versions of the legend say that after the fire, citizens checked the cemetery and not only found the chains broken, but found the grave dug open, the body gone. Now, I cannot confirm or deny this, but I am including it. 3, a 1978 article in the Yazoo Herald claimed that a longtime resident said the chained grave was actually a jealous wife. That the whole witch story was made up and the grave contains the body of a woman whose husband had her buried there with chains as some sort of punishment or statement. And I find this explanation somehow more disturbing than the witch one. A man chaining his dead wife's grave? Sir, come on. And that is the story of the Witch of Yazoo. A nameless woman, a swamp shack, A boy on a raft who could not mind his business. Poisoned fishermen. Skeletons on the ceiling. A maniacal gallop. Quicksand. A very specific 5-part deadline inclusive dying curse. 30 chain links. 20 years of silence. A fire on the exact date she said. Broken chains. A novelist. A grave with a sign. And chains that keep breaking. And I guess what I want to leave you with is this. Whatever you believe about whether she was actually a witch, whether the fire was actually her doing, or whether the chains break for supernatural or mundane reasons, the Witch of Yazoo is real. She is real because a town gave her power and then spent 140 years maintaining that power. And then spent 140 years maintaining that power, keeping her chains in place, telling her story, building an industry out of her legend. She is the most powerful person in Yazoo City, and she has been dead since 1884. If that's not witchcraft, I don't know what is. She is fucking iconic. And well, guys, that's it for this week's episode. You know the drill. Share, rate, review, subscribe, curse your enemies, drink their blood, the usual. And until next time, maybe start Googling where quicksand exists, because today I learned that I'm going to Mississippi never, because as a millennial, I have a very real fear of motherfucking quicksand.